Thank you, Rusty. Catherine Davis is going to offer our invocation today.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Please join me in prayer. Today, when I say good afternoon to my fellow Rotarians and guests, please know that with these two words, I offer prayer using each letter in good afternoon. So today, I pray that God offers us his outstanding devotion to activate our minds, to help us to follow you and be obedient, treat all with respect, energize us to be kind, renew our spirits, and never, ever forget that our compassion and our love for each other never allows us to forget that God loves us. I pray for understanding by each of us present this afternoon as our esteemed speaker, Jim Gandy, offers vital information on global warming and weather trends. We thank you, Lord, for this time together today and for the wonderful meal that has been prepared for us. We give you the glory and honor and love to praise your name each time we pray together. Amen.
Thank you, Catherine. Everybody takes their seats. I'm going to welcome Chase Heatherly up here. Chase has been putting together our list of folks to give the invocation all year long, and he's doing a great job, and today he's filling in to welcome our visiting Rotarians and guests.
Good morning, or good afternoon. Good afternoon. We're going to do a little backwards today. I'm actually going to introduce the guest before our one busy Rotarian who's still making his way in. So if you have a guest today, can you please stand along with your guests? Pass around the mic. All right, if you have a guest, please stand along with your guests, and we will have you introduce your guests one at a time. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Carrie Powers. I have two guests with me today. First, I have Scott Hickler with me, and he is the Midlands Market President for Security Federal Bank. And I also have Kim Mitchell with Castle Brothers Heating and Cooling, and hopefully she will not be a guest very much longer. So welcome to both of you.
Good afternoon, I'm Linda Carpenter, and I have Karen Horton with me, a good friend who is a financial advisor with Capital Securities. She's a financial advisor, financial coach, life coach, helps you make the most of your money.
Any other guests before I move on to visiting Rotarians? We have one very special visiting Rotarian today. Visiting from the Casey Club, we have the Honorable Joe Wilson, Congressman for the state of South Carolina. He's right up here. Can I give Joe a round of applause? Congressman Wilson with us. I think we have one more guest just stuck in the back, so we'll have you introduce your guest.
Good afternoon, Craig Wilson. I have as a guest Dr. Sherry Beasley. She is Chief of Staff of Richland County School District 1, and she's also a member of the 5 Points program.
Thank you, Chase, and welcome to all of our visiting Rotarians and guests. Congressman Wilson, great to have you here today, as Chase said. I'd like to invite up now Mason Hardy. Mason is the committee chair for our Rotary International Foundation efforts this year, and he's going to talk to you a little bit about the World Polio Day and just polio awareness in general. October is Polio Awareness Month, and as you know, that's a big cause for Rotary International. Mason.
Thank you, President Steve. And yes, I'm the foundation guy for this year, and we've got a lot of emphasis on polio eradication. Specifically, you all know, for the guests that are here in the room, the Rotary International Foundation really is trying to eradicate polio. We're very close worldwide. So we're doing a big push this month for polio awareness. And the first event to bring to y'all's attention about this is next Wednesday, October 24th at 1 o'clock. Governor McMaster is giving out a proclamation about polio, and we want to have a lot of red there. That's why I'm wearing my red tie today, but the red t-shirts are for sale on the website. but also we want you to wear red and be there at 1 o'clock at the State House next Wednesday, the 24th. In addition, we've got an opportunity through our district. The district's going to match contributions to the Rotary International Foundation towards polio up to $25,000. So, as you make your contributions, I know that most of you pay quarterly. If you want to maybe make that a little bit larger, it will be matched by our district up to $25,000 and go towards the eradication of polio this month. So please do that. And I want to offer a suggestion on how to do that. I'm a Rotarian just as you all are, and I give quarterly, but I'm very close to my next Paul Harris level. So I'm going to give it forward. I'm going to pay the amount left for me to get to the next Rotary Paul Harris Fellow level this month because it's going to be doubled by the efforts of our district. I would encourage you all to do the same thing. I have the entire totality list of all the Rotarians of the club and what their giving levels are at Paul Harris. I've highlighted some that were within less than $200 to give. So if you were to do that, you'd reach your next Paul Harris. But if you're interested in your level and how much more money you would have to give to get to the next Paul Harris level, please see me after the meeting. I'll be glad to show it to you. It's right here. We look forward to having a good turnout next Wednesday, October 24th, and also big contributions this month towards the eradication of polio. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mason. I appreciate your leadership on that throughout the year. I'm going to invite John Asman up to deliver our health and happiness today. Welcome to the microphone, John.
Thank you, President Stevens, and good afternoon. I asked earlier if there were any notes of happiness or that I needed to share, birthdays, anniversaries. I guess everybody's happy and we're doing well. Let's see. I want to mention something that touched us all, the storm of Michael, that as they refer to it as a monster storm. I was looking at some statistics on it, and how many people here might have either property or homes and family down where that hit in Florida? Is any? How they doing? They're surviving. Yeah, surviving. That's amazing. That storm, it's obviously going to be the most costly. I saw a note somewhere between 160 and 215 billion worth of damages. 155 mile an hour winds coming ashore in the Panhandle. I found it remarkable. The number I saw that passed away as a result of that was only like less than 20 people, 18 to 20. Nothing is, I mean, one person is too many. But it amazes me for as fast as that storm was. So please continue to keep family and friends that are down in that area in your prayers. On a lighter note, did anyone's favorite college football team lose a game this week?
Not a lighter note, that's a heavy note.
It's a heavy note. Well, I have a suggestion that might help you cope with that. Many of you might be familiar with, it's a business principle that's familiar to a lot of business people. It's called the Pareto principle. Sometimes called the 80-20 rule, where for many events, roughly 80% of the effects come from 20% of the causes, the 80-20 rule. Well, there's a comparable version of that for college football, and this is to help you cope with it. Do not let 80-20-year-olds ruin your weekend. Today, many of you probably are aware that kind of an old standby company for many years in the U.S. has filed for bankruptcy. I'm talking about what we know as Sears. So I thought perhaps a short stroll down memory lane might be in order. Who can remember the original name of Sears? You're close, but that's not it. It's Sears, Roebuck and Company. but you're right. All of us says, oh, Sears Roebuck. Okay. The founders in 1893. This is in Chicago in 1893. Richard Sears, he was a railroad agent. And Alva Roebuck, according to my notes, was watchmaker. So the Sears, Roebuck and Company was formed. Does anybody know what their original goal was to do? They were going to be a mail order watch seller. Railroad agent, watches and timing were very important. Okay. Is anyone here, I know of at least two, one of them's not present. Has anyone here ever worked for Sears? Whoa, there's a couple of them. Okay. All right. In any capacity. I'm putting my hand up because here's some more. Great summer work or Christmas work. Show of hands there. Well, I saw Joe Jones and a couple others, and I know Crutchfield. The first store opened in Chicago in 1925, and Joe and Crutchfield were both working there at Sears in 1925. I think one was dealing in airplanes and the other was personnel manager. But when they opened that first store, that same year, they bought out and launched a brand named automobile tire. What was the name of the tire? Think of Sears and what you might purchase there. Allstate. 1925, Allstate as a tire was the first time. In 1927, Sears introduced a brand of hand tools. Oh yeah, who still has a Craftsman tool? At least one. Oh yeah, okay. That's the younger. In 1931, they formed the Allstate Insurance Company. And what was the slogan? You're in good hands with Allstate. And somebody mentioned this earlier when I first started. It was in 1933 that Sears produced their first Christmas. All right. Who couldn't wait? Did your family, well, this is not for you young ladies. Did your family get excited when the catalog came? Oh, yeah. My wife told me earlier that my wife's name's Agnes, and we were talking about it. She said, she grew up house full of girls. Father was the only male. So the catalog came, and they would just fight over it, flipping through it. They would play, she said, they played the game. That's me. I said, that's me? What's that? She said, we flip through and look at all the pretty ladies in their outfits, and they would point to it and say, that's me. That's me. And they would, whoever got there first. Okay, now here's something I learned. It's not that I was a Sears expert. In 1952, and only for 1 year did they do this, Sears debuted a mail order car. Does anybody know the name of the car? They only did it for 1 year, and it was mail order. That's close because of the look of it. It was actually a car they named after their tires, Allstate. It was made by Kaiser Fraser. Kaiser Fraser made a car called the Henry J. Two-door coupe, kind of a sleek front end. And Sears has made a special order and put a plaid interior. And all of their cars were Sears blue. And you could mail order that through Sears. It didn't go over that well. So they only did that for 1 year. Okay. But in '67, they came out with an auto battery called Dial. '73, they opened the office in Chicago, the world's tallest building at that time in '73, 110-story building in Chicago. So, Crutchfield, we thank you. And Joe, thank you for getting me started off on the right track. As a wind up, I just have to, yes?
You started this with last month and today, so I don't want anybody worrying about Crutchfield and me. I've been going for 25 years now. I don't own a single share of Sears stock since 1994. The biggest stock that I own is Allstate, and I've never purchased a share. And the second one is Morgan Stanley, which was preceded by Dean Weather. So we're doing fine.
All right. All right. In closing, this is kind of under the health and happiness theme. I have a couple of questions and a couple of statements. Think about this now. I'm going to ask you a question. Can people detect if you are healthy and happy? I'll let you just answer that yourself. Can you detect if other people are healthy and happy? You can impact another person's health and happiness. Once you've learned to love, you will have learned to live. So with God's blessing, let each day be your masterpiece. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Appreciate all the work you put into that health and happiness. And it's an astounding day when the Sears company's out of business. Officially. I'd like to invite Blake Buchanan up to the podium to talk to you a little bit about our 2019 Bocce Bash. Many of you have heard me talk about this time and time again, and I think I'm just going to have to keep talking about it and make sure it sticks for the year. Our big fundraiser for the club in the 2018-2019 Rotary year is the Bocce Bash, and that is going to be held on April 27th at the Fireflies Stadium at Spirit Communications Park. It's going to be a fantastic event. There's some material on your tables that Blake is going to talk to you about. I want you to look at the logo, and I want you to know that there's a committee of folks working behind the scenes outside of these meetings to make sure this is a success. But it's very important that we have full club participation in this tournament. And Blake's going to tell you a little bit about how you or your business may be able to help support the tournament.
Thanks, President Stephen. I don't know if you consider me one of the younger members of the club, but I remember all of that stuff about the Sears catalog too, so I'm 44, so I remember all that, and I remember my parents having a Sears car, so when I went off to college and I needed new tires, that's where I got my tires. So I remember those things. So I guess the first question is, how many of you have played bocce before? I mean, if you even know what it is. Okay, how many of you played cornhole? All right, more hands there, right? So if you play cornhole, bocce is very similar. You're just going to sit here and roll, kind of throw a ball like this. So I guess the other question would be, how many of you like to drink beer? Okay, so that's available too, not just participating by playing in the Bocce Bash. So I put a couple of these on. I didn't put a lot of these. I put about 2 copies of these on the table, on everybody's table. If you did not get one, I've got some extras. But please take one if you can, and if you need more, let me know. As President Stephen mentioned, the biggest thing is going to be is the sponsorships. And we listed a few of them on here. You'll see a hospitality tent and a lunch sponsor. And we would like for you, as you're planning your 2019, as many of you can look at your budgets, think about your budgets, what you're doing, and if there's a way that you feel like you could support this, via hospitality tent sponsorship or lunch, that'd be great. Court sponsorships are probably going to be the biggest one that we have the most available. And it says 27 available because one has already been sold, and that's Glenn Matthews with Modern Exterminating. They put their name on the very first sponsorship of a court. So thanks, Glenn, we appreciate it. And anybody else? One of the things that mentions on here is there's a woman by the name of Harley Carpenter who works in Special Olympics. It mentions contacting her, but you can contact one of us in the club. Myself would be probably the first person to go to if you're interested in sponsoring one of these courts. Just to give you an idea, we do this in the outfield of the ballpark, and there's going to be courts just lined across the outfield with tents up and everything, and people out there having a good time playing. And the video board running as well, so you'll get some recognition on the video board. T-shirts will be made available. And if you're, I'm being told the website. I'm getting there. I wasn't sure how much time I had. But the website, which Cynthia has up here, you can go find all this information right there. And as I say, SO-. sc.org. So if you'll go to that website, you can actually sign your team up on here. So besides court sponsorships, if your business wants to put a team in, you can do that as well. All that pricing is on these two sheets, and it's on that website. And this is posted on our website as well, right?
And your sponsorship will be on our website with a link as well.
So she said that your sponsorship will be on our website with a link as well. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask me, and I appreciate it. Look forward to everybody participating next spring. Thank you.
Thank you, Blake. Appreciate that. This is going to be a really exciting event. The things that are not listed on there, which you will find on the website, is just if you want to sign up with 3 of your friends to go play, that's certainly an option too. One of the good parts about this fundraiser that's a little different from our past fundraisers is we're going to be going to the community at large for sponsorships and teams, and so this is going to be an event that we will present to the whole community, and the whole community will support. And I've mentioned this before, but the Special Olympics and the Columbia Rotary Club are actually going to share in the proceeds that are generated from this, and the proceeds that we get will go to make sure we have enough money in our scholarship fund every year for the $40,000 a year we fund. It'll also go to fund things like the fund service project we did here. It'll just really help our overall account balances in general. So it's going to be a good time. I invite you to check it out. And Blake, again, thank you for that. I have a few updates for the club that I want to share. I probably should have given these to John for the health and happiness, but I did not see him before the meeting. Libby Gober had surgery today, so just keep Libby in your prayers. She should be okay. I think she's having her thyroid operated on, and that's what she told me. It was not a private matter, but just something we need to be thinking of her about. She also sent me an email to let me know that past member Jack Sloan is now home from the hospital. He was in the hospital several days after his surgery, and is slowly getting his strength back, so please continue to think about Jack. Near and dear to my heart, so we haven't seen President-elect Louisa here in a little while, and my own joking around, I was talking about I'm so jealous, she's gone on this fun cruise for 3 weeks in Europe and having a great time. Well, it turns out it was the cruise from hell. I spoke to her husband Bill over the weekend, and I talked to Louisa as well over speakerphone. Louisa had a fall while she was there and hit her head really hard and had a concussion. She's also broken her neck. She's not, this is a fracture to one of her cervical vertebrae. She's okay, but she's got a neck brace on. She would not like to have any visitors right now, but she's just going through a lot. And I can tell you, I'm really proud of her. Her biggest concern, and Bill kept calling me, was to say, the speakers at Rotary, what about this, what about that? Because next week we have the governor scheduled to come on the 22nd, and typical schedule for the governor, he had to move it to the 29th, and so we had an opening, and she was so concerned about it, and I told her that do not worry, we will take care of it, and sure enough, we do have a great program lined up for next week. I'll tell you about later. But anyway, just please be thinking about Louisa, and let's pray for a fast recovery for her. Last week, I also asked you for a volunteer for the Salvation Army bell ringing campaign, and I want to thank Doug Cochran for volunteering to do that this year. I don't see Doug in the audience today. Doug, are you here? Anyway, if you see Doug, please tell him thank you. He's volunteered to do it, and I put him in touch with the Major, Henry, over there, and we're going to have another great year. It's a fun tradition that we do. Rotary Day at the fair is this Thursday. I saw the Sergeant at Arms from the Main Street Rotary Club, and they're the ones who are putting this on. And I said, okay, what do we need to do? They've already sold out of all their packages, but if you want to go to the fair this year, go on Thursday, go to the grandstands. It's from 4:30 to 5:30. That's the big count that they're doing to make sure to go for a Guinness World Record. They put a lot of work into it, and I think it's something to be great. If you're planning to go to the fair and you're not sure which day to go Thursday. It'll be a great time. And now I would like to introduce Jerry Pate, who's going to introduce our speaker.
Thanks, Stephen. Just a note, and I told Stephen about this when we were talking about the Polio Plus campaign. This is a rough estimate on my part. I was a Polio Plus campaign chairman years back. I believe this club has raised close to or a little over $90,000 to go eradicate polio. So that's something you can tell your children and grandchildren, that you help wipe out a crippling disease. That's not our speaker or our subject today, but I thought you guys might want to know that. And I got a phone call from Jim Covington this morning. He always calls me right before Rotary Day. And he says, guess what happened on this date in 1954? Anybody know? That's right. Hurricane Hazel hit South Carolina. Okay, this is the headline. And also it says in the newspaper, and I showed this to Jim Gandy, Churchill shuffles cabinet. So that's how old that newspaper is. And our speaker was about 18 months old when Hurricane Hazel hit South Carolina. We'll get into it, okay? He was born in Memphis, grew up in Jacksonville, Florida, and has been in Columbia for the last 34 years, over 34 years. He's a chief meteorologist for WLTX TV. He has 4 regional Emmy Awards and a Silver Circle Award from the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences. He's been recognized in South Carolina for it. He was the guy that correctly forecast the exact path of Hurricane Hugo. He's also been recognized for his coverage of the 1993 superstorm and the Lexington County tornado outbreak that occurred in 1994. He's created a feature that he uses in his weathercast at Channel 19 called Climate Matters. And that feature has been picked up and used by over 600 television meteorologists around the world. He is the first certified broadcast meteorologist in Columbia. He's been studying our climate for the last 42 years as a professional meteorologist. He holds a degree in meteorology from Florida State and has done postgraduate work in atmospheric science at the University of South Carolina. And he was recently named a Fellow of the American Meteorological Society. Please welcome Jim Gandy.
First things first, you got to turn on the clicker. Normally my presentations can be kind of lengthy. Jerry gave me 15 minutes. So it's cut down just a bit. And what I wanted to do today, I'm going to touch on the science behind what we know about climate change, but my focus is going to be on right here. How is our changing climate affecting us? And the first question I have for you is, how did you like the summer? I take it that didn't meet quite your expectations. Did you know that it was the 5th hottest summer on record? And what's even more amazing is that the 5 hottest summers on record have all occurred since 2010. Which ironically is also the year that I started Climate Matters. No correlation. But it's not what you think. Because it's not because of the high temperature. This year, the average high temperature for the summer was the 9th hottest. In fact, we only had 3 days in which we hit 100 degrees. So it wasn't about extreme heat. It was about the persistence of heat. It is not the high temperature that's driving it as much as it is the low temperature. On the low temperature side, this was the 5th warmest summer on record. And the 7 warmest summers on record have all occurred since 2010. And when you combine the two, that's how you get the hottest 5 summers on record have been since 2010. And that's really interesting statistic because I can't remember. But back in the 1950s, we had some pretty hot summers. 52 to 54. We had some hot summers in the 1980s. We had some hot summers in the 1990s. And while they had more days of 100-degree heat, at night it cooled off, and in the daytime, the heat wasn't as long as an entire summer. So we're seeing something different. We're seeing something that's changing. It's changing in the persistence of heat and the length of heat, and that's causing our summers to be a little bit hotter. It was astounding. This is something I just discovered. This data set comes from Iowa State University. And I have been saying this now for about 8 years. I first noticed this back in 2010. I said, you know, it's hot. But here in South Carolina, it's not just the heat, it's the humidity. And so back then, my morning meteorologist was Scott Ryan, and we got together, we looked at the statistics. I said, you know, it's just blazing hot outside. It's miserable, it's so humid. And when we didn't have a way of looking at the moisture, because typically we don't keep records archived like that. But what Iowa State University did was they went and got the entire data set for the entire country, dew point temperatures hour by hour. And so I can look at the number of hours where the dew point is above a certain level. Typically, we consider 60 degrees to be humid. Now, dew point is the amount of moisture that's in the air, and the temperature is the temperature the air would have to be for the relative humidity to be 100%. So it's saturated. Well, if a dew point is 60, we consider that to be humid. If it's 70, we consider it to be tropical. If it's 75, which is what this is based on, we consider it to be insane. And a full quarter of our summer, the dew point temperature was above 75 degrees. Now, we would say, well, it's the sun. But it's not the sun. Because, first of all, the sun doesn't shine at night. So that doesn't explain why the low temperatures are warming. And not only that, but the solar output has been essentially flat since 1950. So that doesn't explain the warming that's been taking place. And we have known for a long time that there is something in our atmosphere that traps heat. As it turns out, the first to recognize this was a French mathematician and scientist back in the 1820s. So we've known this for almost 200 years. And we know that if we did not have an atmosphere, our planetary temperature would be about 60 degrees colder. So there's something in the atmosphere that keeps us warm. As it turns out, there are certain gases that surround the globe and actually help to trap the heat that's generated by the Earth. The heat, these gases are transparent to solar radiation. So the sun heats the Earth, but then the Earth radiates that heat in the infrared. And that's where these gases are opaque. They don't let the infrared heat escape. So as we add more and more of these gases, it traps more and more heat. And in the lower atmosphere here at the surface, we get a warming. And we know what these gases are. They are carbon dioxide, methane, nitric oxides, and there is a host of man-made chemicals that we have put into the atmosphere that trap heat as well. Some are more efficient at trapping heat than others. Now these are long-lasting greenhouse gases. There's one gas, though, that's not listed: water vapor. Water vapor is a greenhouse gas, but it is not long-lasting. A water vapor molecule lasts maybe 10 days in the atmosphere before it comes out. Whereas carbon dioxide can last over 100 years. So that's the difference. And carbon dioxide is a little bit better at trapping heat than water vapor. When I started Climate Matters, I had the opportunity to look at how the change in our atmospheric chemistry was going to change things. And one of the first things that we looked at was, well, how's it going to change temperature? Well, to explain what's going on, we had to first of all explain the difference between weather and climate. I've heard a number of people use phrases. I like this one. This one comes from Deke Arndt. Climate trains the boxer, but weather throws the punches. So it's incorrect to say that climate caused something. However, what climate does is it provides the environment for something to happen. Maybe something you don't want to happen. Think of climate change as loading the dice. So we use that analogy. And as it turns out, back in 2010, if you wanted to roll a pair of dice and you come up with snake eyes, that's referred to as snake eyes. What are the odds that you would see, what level temperature would it have to be in order to be equivalent to that? And it turns out it's 101 degrees here in Columbia. So back in 2010, you could expect about 3 days of summer to be 101 degrees or higher. Now, if you continued on our path of emitting carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, by 2040, you could expect 9 or 10 days during the summer to see 101 degree days. By the time you get to 2070, about a quarter of the days in the summer would be 101 degrees or higher. Now, this is an average. That doesn't tell you anything about the range. As it stands now, our range of 101 degree temperatures ranges from none to as many as a dozen. So that's the range, but the average number that we see now, because we've continued to warm, we actually see about 4 days during the summer in which it's 101 degrees or higher. And it's getting more humid, and we've known this. When we track the dew point temperatures here in Columbia, it is getting more humid in the summer. And this summer takes the cake. When you combine the heat and humidity, we're getting more dangerous heat days, as defined by the heat index, 105 degrees or higher. And that's going to continue. And we're seeing more and more of that. I'm trying to find a more efficient way to actually go back and look at the number of 105 degree heat index days. That's a difficult task to have to go do. But climate change is not just about global warming. It's also about the changing air chemistry, because we're changing the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Well, as it turns out, if you increase carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, plants grow faster. We know that. As it turns out, weeds grow even faster. Poison ivy grows fastest of all. And if you are allergic to poison ivy, you probably know that already. But as they say in the commercial, but wait, there's more. It's also more toxic. The toxicity of poison ivy has doubled since 1950, and on our current track will double again by the end of this century. And it's not just it's not just poison ivy. Pollen is increasing as well. So if you're allergic to pollen, if you're allergic to poison ivy, the future is bright for you. But it's not just that. Because of the added heat in the atmosphere, we're seeing heavier downpours. Now, I once wrote an article in which I laid out the case that the amount of moisture in the atmosphere is increasing. And it's very straightforward, because there's a mathematical equation which relates the whole thing. And someone wrote back a comment and said, oh, well then that means that there will be more rain. And I added to that comment and said, well, not exactly. You see, what's happening is we're having heavier downpours, but the time between rain is increasing. So our average annual rainfall is actually going down. So it's a kind of ironic that we're seeing a decrease in the average annual rainfall here in Columbia, yet we're seeing more heavy downpours. Part of that is the fact that when it does rain, it rains heavier. And there has been studies that have shown that the number of days in which you're seeing light and moderate rain are decreasing, but the number of days in which you're seeing extreme rainfall is increasing. Which also explains another oddity that we've noticed in the past few years. If you go back to the flood of 2015, how many of you remember we were in a drought when that happened? So it's kind of ironic. We're always in these droughts and bam, all of a sudden we're in a flood. The other aspect is sea level rise. And this has been a bone of contention among scientists because most climate scientists agree that our estimates of sea level rise are conservative. And the reason for that is because we can't adequately anticipate all the different aspects of ice melt and ice disintegration. And even in the coldest place on Earth, Antarctica, we're losing ice. But we're not losing it in the way that you would normally think we're losing ice. In the Arctic, it's melting. In Antarctica, it's melting from below. And that's causing the glaciers to become destabilized. So, Jerry mentioned it. Back in 2010, I was fortunate to partner with the Center for Climate Change Communication at George Mason University and with Climate Central, and with our TV station, we developed this program, Climate Matters. The whole idea was to educate people about what's going on. Now, there's been a lot of research since then, and from the evidence, I can tell you this: it's real. It's us, meaning it's human caused. Experts agree, and it's bad, but there's hope. And here's why I say there's hope. We caused the problem. We can solve it. And we know what we need to do. We just need to do it. And that's unfortunately the hardest thing to do. And that's where the debate is. The debate is not over the science. The debate is over what are we going to do about it. I did pretty good for 15 minutes.
You got a few more.
Well, I'll tell you what. Let's take questions, because there's always questions. I'll start with you.
Jim, two things. First, how long have they been keeping records? And secondly, go ahead and ask them, Kathy.
Okay, well, as far as the actual records, we've got good records back to 1850. Most of the data sets easily go back to 1880, and that's of the instrument. I did not include this in there, but we've got proxy records that go back hundreds of thousands of years. So while we can't tell you exactly what the temperature was on a certain day, we can tell you with reasonable expectation what the mean temperature was.
The second question is, you showed a slide and said we know it's not the sun.
Yeah.
How do we know it's not the sun?
Because, I'm glad you asked that, we can measure the output of the sun, and we have been quite accurately. In fact, we've been measuring the sun for well over 100 years, and we measure the output of the sun. We also know that the amount of irradiation that's coming from the sun, and you saw the variations in that irradiation. When you do the calculation, it only, from minimum to maximum, only accounts for 1/10 of 1 degree Celsius in the temperature of the globe. So there's not enough solar variation going on to account for the warming that's been taking place. Does that answer your question?
The core of the Earth, and do we measure that as well, the temperature of the core and how it impacts the surface?
We do, but not in the way that you're thinking. Because whatever heat is emitted from the core has to come up through the soil, and we measure soil temperatures. So we know what the soil temperatures are. But the flow of heat is not coming just upward from the core, it's also coming down from the atmosphere.
Did you see the movie Inconvenient Truth? And if so, what
You know, I've got that DVD, and I got it shortly after it came out. And I may be one of the few people, and I know I may be the only scientist who's never seen it. And they asked me, well, why? I said, because I'm busy. I haven't had time to sit down and see it. I haven't even looked at NCIS from last week yet. So I keep getting these hurricanes that keep getting in the way.
A report came out last week that says we have about 10 years to do anything drastic to make changes. What do you suggest we actually do to make an impact on curbing the heat up of our planet?
Well, the first thing that we can all do is conserve. And there are certain ways to do that. And that's a good question, because people are all asking, well, what can I do? Well, there are things. Let me give you the example of our TV station. TV stations are energy hogs, because it takes energy to drive that signal out that you see on TV every night. So what did we do? Well, the first thing we did, we've got an innovative person who's our chief engineer. He changed the entire lighting structure of our studio. And this was back in 2012. That saved us $4,000 a year in electricity. Then he went in to the newsroom and he replaced every computer in there with faster computers. Oh, no, you didn't do that, did you? Oh, yeah, but they were energy efficient computers. That saved us an additional $8,000 a year in energy costs. So just those two things alone saved the station $12,000 a year in energy cost. Now, that's not an insignificant number. But he did something else that I thought was kind of unique. We have microwave vans that we can report from the field with. And typically the equipment, and particularly the batteries for the cameras, are plugged into the unit, but they only charge when the engine is running. Well, our reporters had a bad habit of not recharging the batteries. So sometimes we'd go out to the field and we'd have the truck running, but the batteries hadn't recharged, so we had dead batteries. So what he did was he put a solar panel on top of the van so that the batteries would recharge and we didn't have to run the motor. So that saved us a ton of money in fuel costs. It's because we didn't have to run the van to do that. So it's little things like that. I'm a big fan of LED lights because, for one thing, I don't have to change them as much. And I'm by nature lazy. And in the weather center, in the old weather center, we were changing lights every month. And it was a pain. And so in the previous weather center, the engineer came in, he replaced all of our floodlights with LED lights. And I said, well, now, how long will these lights last? And he said, well, they're rated to last 25 years. I said, good. I'll be retired before you have to replace these lights. And sure enough, when we moved to the new weather center, those lights were still working. Next question.
Can you describe a little bit about, we hear about 1,000-year floods and the 100-year floods. Well, now we've had a couple of them in the last couple of years. So how do we describe you know, in the macro sense, the 100-year flood or the 1,000, what's going to happen now?
It's hard to really grasp a 1,000-year flood. We've had 3 of them in this area, not just Columbia, but in the Carolinas in the last 4 years. But you have to understand that is really for a particular locality. Now, in the case of Nichols, they've had 2,000-year floods in 2 years. That's really the exception, not the rule. But we are seeing more extreme flood events because we're seeing more extreme rain events. Now, the 1,000-year flood doesn't mean that, okay, you're not going to see another one for 1,000 years. It means that the odds that you would see that is maybe once in every 1,000 years, but it doesn't preclude having one next year. And that's essentially what it means. It's a risk assessment. 100-year flood, gosh, it seems like we're seeing those every 10 to 20 years now. And one of my neighbors up in North Carolina, I've got a place up in the mountains, is a retired soil engineer. And so he and I were discussing it, and he said, well, I think we need to redefine the floodplain. He said, because they're all based on the 100-year flood, he said, that's not good enough. We need to be defining those floodplains in terms of 500-year floods. Because what we know as a 500-year flood is based on what happened in the past, not what's going to happen in the future.
Yeah, 2 people won Nobel Prizes last week for the economics and effect it have on climate change would have on it. Would you suggest if you have the beach property, you get rid of it at this time?
Let me just say this. I have never been against anyone having beach property. But you've got to know that you've got to get out of there when a hurricane comes. And my wife and I had the opportunity to buy some beach property back in 2005. And we liked it. It's great. I love the beach. But when I looked at the cost, the price on the property, and when I looked at what the taxes were going to be, and being the meteorologist that I am, I said I wouldn't touch this even if I were filthy rich, which I am not. And so we ended up instead buying a place up in the North Carolina mountains the next year. I said by the time, it was really funny when we were getting the mortgage, the guy with the mortgage company said, well, what if it floods up there? I said, if my place floods, you got bigger problems than me. I'm sitting on top of a ridge. Charlotte's underwater long before I do. And considering the Nobel Prize, they have done some really good work on the effects that climate change is having on the economics. Unfortunately, not enough has been done. We've done a tremendous amount of work in analyzing what's going on, how it's impacting us, and today all you saw was a very small sliver of the research that's been going on, because I've been working with some of the biologists over at USC, and some of the biological effects are amazing as well. So there's a lot to consider. But I think one of the things that we could use more information on is just what they did. We need more information on what is the impact of climate change on different areas of the economy. Because there are going to be some substantial impacts. Some have already occurred, but there are many more to come.
Jim, thank you so much for being here today and for the time you took out of your schedule to be here. We know you are very busy. As a commemorative token, literally, we gave you a little Rotary token. On the back, it's got the four-way test, and we just hope that as the climate change debate continues to take place, that all will consider the four-way test in talking about the true science there. President-elect Louisa is not here, but next week we have a good program. David Hodges is coming. Many of you know David in the life insurance business. He also has a hobby and is the authority on the Sunset Lodge down in Georgetown County. So he is coming to give his Sunset Lodge presentation to us. It's going to be fascinating. For those of you who don't know, that's a brothel that existed down there years ago. He's got a really good talk on it. So please come and learn about the Sunset Lodge and stand, and we will close this off.